Our journey starts in the world of Beilia, an ancient and magical place. At the heart of a shattered continent lies a land known as Ogria, a country of magic, where governance and wizardry are intertwined. Far to the south of this nation, near the southern coast, is a city called the Last Tower. The Last Tower is not as lonesome as the name implies. Once it was the home of a proud and solitary wizard, and it has served many owners over many generations. And like the boughs of a tree offer shelter to the underbrush below, so too has the tower's shadow been a place of refuge and safe haven through the years. A small town, barely a village at first, sprung up here, and has since grown into a city of some renown. At least, domestically within Ogria. Like any good city, though, it has rules and laws and municipal services, the conflux of which often results in a prison. And it is on the steps of this prison where we will meet our first of three characters. Wallace Clearbrook. Wallace is a young halfling man dressed in simple clothes, with visible signs of being mended and remended. He stands barefoot in the street, toes curling in the dust, and glances around nervously. The prison itself is already an imposing structure, more so for a member of the small folk like Wallace. He swallows his nerves and heads inside. The doors part to a small room with a reinforced clerk's desk dominating the space. A set of iron bars separates the bored-looking guardsman from any expected outburst. Wallace continues, finding the desk nearly as tall as himself, and he struggles to make himself known over it. Good morning. I'm Wallace Clearbrook. I'm here to pick up a prisoner. I have a form from the magistrate. Wallace pulls a folded parchment from his pocket and slides it across the desk, the name Alexander Halkus written prominently on the top, followed there by a writ of release and the signature of the magistrate allowing his release. The guardsman looks over the paper slowly and lets out a pained sigh, wiping some of the sleep from his eyes and stretching as he rises from the desk. All right, follow me. A lock in the door to the left of the desk thunks open a moment later, and Wallace is let into the prison under the supervision of the guard. Together, the two turn and walk deeper into the prison, towards the cells. It is here, then, that we meet our next character. Alexander Halkus, a hungover and weary half-elf, hunched against the wall of a cold stone cell, with the barest traces of a warm dawn creeping in from a window set near the ceiling. The cell is damp and drafty, and Alexander shivers against the cold, snapping his fingers repeatedly as he tries to summon some spark of heat, some spark of warmth. His magic wavers and sputters as he attempts to brute force a spell meant for a much different purpose. His head starts pounding against the mental effort, and he groans in discomfort. The sounds of footsteps against the floors of the prison alerts Alex to the guard approaching. He stops his frustrating attempts at spellcasting and pulls his fine silk coat a little tighter against his body, trying to shut out the cold spring morning. The footsteps stop, and Alex looks up to see the guard looming in the door of his cell. The guard turns to address someone out of sight and asks, "This him?" A familiar voice responds as Alexander's friend Wally replies, "Yeah, that's him." The rattling of keys brings Alex to his feet, and when the door swings open, Wallace steps forward to get a better look at his friend. "Wow. You look like shit." Alex rolls his eyes. "Fuck you, Wally. Please, let's just get out of here." Wallace nods, and the two of them exit the prison in silence. The sudden glare of daylight temporarily blinds Alex as his eyes adjust from the dark interior of his cell to the outside world. Fuck. Wally just laughs at his friend, and the two of them start down the street, eager to make some distance from the prison and its guards. "So, you okay?" Wally asks after a few minutes of walking nowhere in particular. Alex stares at his feet for a moment while he debates how to answer the question. "No. I'm definitely not okay. When I got the letter, it didn't feel real. Not yet, but being here and seeing the city, not being able to see him, it hit so much harder, and I didn't handle it well." Wallace chuckles. "Understatement of the century. Look, let's just get back to the inn in time for breakfast. Ravor's lecture won't be nearly as bad on a full stomach." Alex agrees, and together the duo make their way to the Serpent and Swan, a local inn and tavern that they've been staying at since they arrived in the city a few days ago. And it is here, at the Swan, where we meet the third and final member of our trio, Ravor Natal. Just inside the main room stands a towering slab of draconic might, a gold-scaled draconid man in partially rusted armor. He has the bearings of a soldier, but the kind eyes of a healer. When Wallace and Alex enter from the street, Ravor's back is turned to them, stooped into the hearth, helping the innkeeper light it for the morning. "No, ma'am, it's no issue," Ravor replies to a conversation unheard by his friends. Then, with a deep breath, he blows a thin stream of dragon fire into the woodpile at the center of the hearth. It smolders for a moment and then catches from the immense heat. Ravor stands to return to his seat and finally notices that his friends have arrived. He motions to a table, and the three reconvene for the first time since Alex was arrested the previous day. "Alex," Ravor growls. "Ravor?" Alex winces. "How are you feeling?" Ravor questions his friend with a raised eyebrow. Alex groans and rolls his neck. I feel like shit, honestly. I think I'm still hungover, and I know I didn't handle things well yesterday. I'm working on it." Ravor gives his friend a withering look. "I promise not to do anything else while we're here," Alex sighs. "Good. If you started a scene at a funeral, I'd have to kick your ass," Ravor grumbles. He reaches across the table to clasp Alex on the shoulder, and as he does so, his hand sparkles with a flickering light. It shines for only a moment, and then is gone like a snuffed-out candle. Ah, shit. That's the best I can do for you right now. Ravor sits back down as Alex blinks with a sudden clarity. The pains in his neck are fading. The dull ache behind his eyes lessened, and the feeling of nausea deep in his gut has all but vanished. Thank you, Ravor. That feels miles better already. Alex stretches and flags down the innkeeper with a wave of his hand. He orders breakfast for them all, along with several pitchers of water. Food is delivered for them a moment later. The other guests at the inn start to awaken, and several patrons from nearby houses filter in to purchase their own meals on the way to work. The dull noise of a crowd soon fills the common room. The trio sits there eating breakfast until eventually Wally is the first one to speak up. So, what time is the funeral? He asks, sitting on a raised seat that has been added to the otherwise standard height bench. Accommodations provided for the small folk. I don't know, I'm not going, Alex mutters under his breath. Like hell's you're not, Ravor spits. A quiet fury simmers in his eyes. Magister Cabin was a friend to your grandfather for many years, and a tutor to your house for just as long. He taught me to read, he taught Wally his numbers, and he taught you more magic than I thought to learn. We are going. Alex starts to protest, but Wally just puts a hand on his shoulder. Sorry, bud. We're being paid to be here as employees of Magister Halkis. Your great-grandfather gave us permission to drag you to the ceremony if we have to. Fine, I get it, Alex concedes. The ceremony starts at midday. We've got a few hours left to get ready. I prepared all our clothes while you were out this morning, Wallace. Courtesy of Magister Halkis. Alex can't help but roll his eyes at the display of magisterial etiquette. If Magister Halkis cared so much about Cabin, he'd be here himself. I'm not mad at you guys. Really, this whole thing is just... yeah. We know, buddy. Wallace pats Alex on his shoulder, and they finish their meals. After eating, they proceed to the top floor of the inn, rented entirely just for the three of them, and they begin getting dressed in their finery. Alex takes some time to splash some cold water in his face, more for the fatigue deep in his bones than the smell. With a practiced flourish, he calls a spell of cleansing to his aid. Sweat and grease are pulled from his hair, and the dust and grime of his prison stay crumble and flake to the floor, separated from him by sheer force of will. He brushes his dark locks back into a more presentable manner. Ducking his head into the hallway, Alex calls for his friend. Hey, Wally? Can you come tell me if I still smell like prison? Wallace doesn't even look up from tying his boots. You always smell like something, bud. The spell you use makes you smell like ozone and rainwater. I'd wash up with some real soap just to be safe. Alex lifts an arm and sniffs himself, recoiling slightly at the oddly accurate description. He returns to his wash basin and continues getting ready. Within an hour, the three are dressed in full black. Ravor's armor and shield are stowed, and his sword is strapped gracefully at his hip. Wallace shifts uncomfortably at being made to wear shoes, but beams with pride when he realizes he can hide his favorite knife down at the ankle. Alex leans on his spell cane at the top of the stairs, proud to see his low-born friends cleaned up so well. He couldn't help but wish it was for a better occasion. "Well, my lords," Alex teases his friends. "Being late to a funeral is in bad taste, so we best be off." The three of them exit the Serpent and Swan into the city streets. Ravor takes the lead towards the tower itself, looming in the distance above the city. As the most recent occupant of the last tower, Magister Cabin will be entombed at its base, with generations of his forebearers. As the group walks through the city streets, dark clouds roll in. Slow at first, then quicker as they approach the graveyard. By the time they see the Iron Gate in the distance, the sky is entirely overcast. Dull thunder roars nearby as they arrive. The gate to the cemetery grounds is open, and a small crowd is gathered nearby. A person dressed in dull black robes and a full veil mingles with the attendees, ushering new arrivals and making a point to speak with everyone. Their entire appearance is obfuscated by the clothes that they wear. Even their hands are adorned with black gloves. However, as they approach, Alex and his friends notice a silver amulet glistens around their neck, a holy symbol of a god. Each of the new arrivals sees it and tries to recall what they know of the gods. With a 14 religion check, Wallace is the only one who immediately recognizes the symbol as the divine sigil of Azdoom, god of funerals and internments. He does not share this information with the rest of his party. The priest, closing the distance with the newest group of arrivals, bows and speaks. His voice is the only indicator of any personal identity. "Welcome, Lord Halkus," he nearly whispers. His voice is soft and sounds far away. "I've been hoping to see you attend today. The Lord Cabin mentioned you in his last testament. I cannot tell you what he has said until the reading of his words, but I would ask that you stay for the dispensation." With those words, the priest gave a final polite bow and turned away from the group. Alex looks stunned. He turns to his friends to gauge their reactions, and Wally just shrugs. It doesn't take long for the service to begin. Most of the attendees arrived long before our group, and just as the priest is gathering everyone's attention, the clouds break and the rain begins. Silently, the priest walks to a small table in front of the mausoleum. On it, he places a large crystal cut into a perfect pyramid, and a box containing the bones of Magister Cabin. With a gentle touch, the crystal begins to hum and shine, projecting out an image of the Magister recorded before his death. Magister Cabin is an old man with deep-set wrinkles, laugh lines around his eyes. A long white beard extends from his chin, braided into a single strand. Hello. My name is Bartholomew Cabin, and in light of my age, and the acquisition of certain infirmities brought on by that age, I fear that the time of my death approaches swiftly. To the people of the last tower, I leave the sum total of my monetary assets and the real estates that I have acquired within the surrounding area throughout my life. They are to be dedicated to several public works, namely the maintenance of a hospital and the staffing of an orphanage. The details will all have been sent to the mayor of the city. Cabin pauses, smiling softly. In my long life, I have found many wonderful friends. I cannot hope to list all the gifts I intend to send off, but a list will have been kept in my personal records to assure that they are delivered. There are, however, some things too important to delegate. Cabin looks directly into the device recording him, his eyes piercing despite the barrier of death that now separates him from this world. Alex feels a chill down his spine. My seat in the magisterium, as well as my residence in the last tower, and all things contained within, I leave to Ernest Shaw, my aide and longest continuous apprentice. Ernest, I have taught you everything I thought to pass on, and you have surpassed me in every way that I hoped. Serve well. A middle-aged man in the crowd nods solemnly. Alex had never met Mr. Shaw in person, but he had heard a great many things. To Alexander Halkus, my youngest and most promising student. Cabin begins again. Alex's ears perk up, and he feels his eyes watering. From where he stands, it seems as if Cabin is looking through him. I leave a collection of tomes and manuscripts I had hoped to pass on to you upon your graduation from S5, prior to your expulsion. I have no doubts that you do not need a school to excel in your studies. However, in place of the mentorship that I can no longer provide, I leave you in the care of your friends, who I trust. I will also leave to you the first wand I enchanted by hand. Use it well. Alex feels hot tears streaming down his face, mixing with the cold raindrops. Ravor's hand comes to rest on his shoulder. And to my many friends that I hope see this message, I leave you all my love. I will see you in the next life. Thank you. And just as quickly as the message begins, it ends. What? What? That's it? A voice rings out from the crowd, and everyone around begins straining their necks to see who made the outburst. On an 18 perception check for Alex and a 16 for Wallace, they both peer over the crowd, or through, in Wallace's case, to see Avior Duval, Cabin's first, former, disgraced apprentice. Cabin, you fool! The years I spent toiling underneath you, elevating you to the place of Magister, to Archmage, and you leave me nothing? Eivor screams. Fine. If you will not give me what is owed, I will take it. A flash of magic is seen through the crowd, followed a moment later by another. The ground rumbles, and Avior takes to the sky. He flies away into the rain as the sound of clawing fingers and shifting mud echo through the graveyard. The lingering crowd is still in shock, but they start to panic and run. The priest, fearing the worst, moves Caben's remains to the mausoleum door. And just after, a hand bursts through the earth, fingers clawing at the sky. One by one, the dead of the last tower begin to pull themselves from the ground, skeletal bodies and rotting remains shambling towards the living with a cold hunger in their eyes. Most of the funeral attendees have scattered, screaming and running. The priest clutches his holy symbol in prayer, and Ravor draws his sword as our party rolls initiative. By nature of how many dice rolls are required for this, the combat section is mostly improv. As we begin combat with rolls of 16, 14, and 13, Ravor, Wallace, and Alex are all first. Wallace finds himself standing almost face to face with a zombie as it crawls from the ground. He draws the knives hidden in either of his boots and attempts to attack the undead horror. With an 11 on his attack roll, he just barely makes contact for 5 piercing damage. The zombie, being undead, has a moment of falter. There is no pain, but there is damage. And through that damage, hunger. With his bonus action, Wallace can attack again with his offhand. Though this will do faintly less damage. It should not have the +4 added to it. And with a 21 on his attack roll, he will hit, this time for 4 rather than 5, a combined 9. Taking a step back, that moved every token. That should not have been done. Taking a step back, Wallace moves towards the priest at the entrance of the mausoleum and ends his turn. We come then to Ravor, who, for the first time, finds himself without shield or armor, as he must do combat with creatures he has no protection from. Thankfully, at least, he has his sword in hand as he stalks forward towards the enemy Wallace had already struck. Combat music should not have ended. Let's loop that. The creature is wounded significantly, having taken 9 damage, and Ravor slashes forward with his sword, trying to put an end to it. With a 22 on an attack roll, he hits for an additional 6 damage, bringing the total for this zombie to 15. Without any other supplies on him besides a sword, Ravor has nothing else he can do and ends his turn. We come then to Alex. Thankfully, Alex's cane is his spellcasting focus, and he can at least somewhat try to bring his magic to bear. From where he stands, he can step around Ravor and shoot a thin beam of fire from the top of his cane. On a 10, he hits for 8 points of fire damage. These undead, immobile creatures cannot dodge. Not effectively, at least. Now, with a total of, I believe, 23 damage to this zombie, it must make a Constitution saving throw for a feature called Undead Fortitude. If reduced to 0 hit points, it may make a DC 5 plus damage taken con save, and instead fall to 1 hit point. As it has taken 8, it needs a DC 13. And on exactly a 13, it has 1 hit point left. Alex can then move back towards the mausoleum, looking to the priest for some help, some guidance. Immediately after Alex are several commoners, all in different parts of the graveyard, scrambling and trying to escape. The one immediately after him takes off at a run towards the gate. And in doing so would trigger an attack of opportunity from one of the zombies. On a 22 to hit, the zombie clips the commoner as they run, dealing a significant bloody gash along the side. With no zombies around, the second commoner can run and action dash towards the gate. In truth, the other commoner should have been able to action dash anyway. The third and not quite final commoner, seeing zombies between them and the exit, will weave between gravestones, trying to get as far from danger as possible. And then, unfortunately, we come to a mass of many, many zombies. Their speed is only 20 feet, though the zombie on initiative 10 has enough to close the distance with a commoner and make an attack. On a 5, their attack misses, and that has taken their action, which takes us to a different zombie. Their 20 feet of movement is not sufficient to close the distance. Action dash, though, they begin to surround the unfortunate soul. On initiative 8, the 1 hit point zombie that Ravor and Wallace had attacked can now counterattack with a blow of its own. Without his armor, Ravor currently has a much lower armor class. However, on a 7, the zombie still misses. The rest of the zombies begin shuffling through the graveyard, aiming towards whatever signs of the living they can find. Trapped back in the corner, the final commoner begins scrambling up the fence at the edge of the graveyard, spilling out and running for the city, screaming the entire way. And last but not least, the final zombie has enough movement to close the distance with Ravor and attempt to attack them from behind, granting advantage on the attack roll. And on a 17, Ravor takes 5 points of bludgeoning damage, knocking the wind out of his lungs and bringing a splatter of blood to his lips. And with a natural 1 initiative, on the very bottom of combat is the priest. The priest calls upon the powers of Ozdum, god of the graves, and attempts to abjure these undead creatures. Zombies within 30 feet of the priest, which is only the group surrounding Ravor, must make wisdom saving throws or be frightened. We have 1, 2, and 3, going left to right. The DC is 15, so only the second has succeeded. The first zombie becomes frightened, and the third zombie becomes frightened. And we then come to the top of the initiative order for round 2, where Wallace now sits. If Wallace moves, he triggers an attack of opportunity, but unlike his friends, he is very light on his feet, and a 9, even without armor on, does not hit. Wallace comes around behind the injured zombie that had almost been defeated, and will make his attacks with advantage from flanking with Ravor. On a 22 to hit, he deals 7 damage, and the zombie must make a DC 12 con save or be defeated. With a natural 1, the zombie does not gain undead fortitude and passes. Wally still has enough movement to get one more in range here, flanking once more with Ravor and attacking at advantage. He does not get the +4 to damage, so this is merely 3 damage, but that brings us immediately then to Ravor's turn. Ravor, also flanking, can make his attack at advantage. And on a natural 20, his damage should have been 2d8. So we will add a second d8 there. 7 plus 5 for 13. In addition to the 3 that Wallace did is 16 damage. And being a paladin, Ravor can Divine Smite. As his bonus action, he deals 2d8, or in this case, 4d8. Which deals another 19 radiant damage to the singular non-frightened undead in his immediate vicinity. As it is radiant damage, and from a critical hit, undead fortitude does not apply, and the zombie is defeated. We come then to Alex, who, seeing the effects of the divine magic, will endeavor to protect himself rather than try and defeat an enemy that is already fleeing. He casts Mage Armor, and a shimmering ward of magical protection comes into effect around him. He does not move, and he does not take a bonus action. We come then to one of the commoners who will successfully escape, and the other one will successfully escape. They have made it past the gates and are fleeing. The final commoner here, though, is surrounded, and on attempting to run will trigger 3 attacks of opportunity, 2 of which are at advantage. On a natural 1, the non-advantage attack misses. On a 14, one of the attacks hits for 3 damage. And on a 10, one of the attacks hits for 5 damage. A total of 8 The unfortunate commoner, stumbling away from the zombies in fear, in panic, is struck heavy and brought low. The sound of crunching bone echoes through the graveyard as the zombies begin to feast on the dead. There we go. These zombies are going to spend their actions to consume the dead, which would regenerate hit points if they had taken any damage. This zombie has been frightened and must use its movement to get at least 20 feet away from the priest. That's its full movement speed, which does trigger an attack of opportunity from Ravor and an attack of opportunity from Wallace. Ravor's attack does not seem to want to roll for some reason. On a 17, Ravor hits for a 1d8 damage. And Wallace also attacks. We are being very slow here. I apologize. Okay. Ravor hits for 6 slashing, bringing the first 6 damage that this creature will take. On a 19, Wallace hits for 6 piercing, bringing the total on this zombie to 12. And I will just have to roll future things manually because I'm not waiting for that. We come then to the priest, who has a few spells, of which we will cast Bless. A blessing of aid, a divine boon, is called down, and specifically granted to Ravor, Wallace, and Alex, who appear to be contesting the undead the most. We come then to the start of the round, where Wally will drop back and hold an attack for an enemy to get in range. Ravor will do the same. They will both attack if an enemy gets within range. And Alex, meanwhile, will shoot a firebolt into the zombie that is fleeing. He has a +6 attack bonus. And on a 12, he hits for 1d10 fire damage. Unfortunately, my macros aren't working. But 12 hits for 5. With the 12 previously, that zombie has now taken 17 damage. And having taken damage, it can make a wisdom save at the start of its turn from the Abjure Undead ability, which we will go ahead and do since all the zombies are at the same time. On an 18, it is no longer frightened. We have 4 zombies here, the first of which cannot reach Ravor or Wallace and will have to action dash, at which point Wallace gets to make his attack. When it comes to daggers, Wallace has a +6 as well. And on an 11 to hit, does 1d4 +4 piercing damage for a total of 6. The next zombie, likewise, cannot reach any of the living and must action dash, at which point Ravor makes his attack. He likewise has a +6 bonus. However, I forgot to add the Bless, which is 1d4. And on a 10, brought in over to 10 by the Bless, Ravor hits for 1d8 plus 4, dealing 11 damage. This zombie has to action dash to get anywhere within range. And this one does not, which allows it to make a single attack against Wallace. It has a +3 to hit. And on a 6, it will miss. That brings us then back to the priest at the bottom of round 3. Seeing that Ravor has been injured, the priest will cast Healing Word, which will return 2d4 plus 3 hit points. At 7, full healing the paladin. We come back then to the top of the round. Wally and Ravor have a zombie between them. We'll try a dagger one more time to see if it wants to be any faster. And it does not. So instead we will attack manually. On a 21, Wallace hits for 1d4 plus 4 piercing damage, which in this case is 5. That attack should have been an advantage. And immediately after that, we'll attack again with his offhand. And on a 25, deals just 1d4 for 3, a total of 8 damage. We come then to Ravor, who's seeing a clustered group of enemies, regrets using his breath weapon once already today, but thankfully has just one more charge left. He leans back, breathing deep, and exhales a cone of fire. Originating from him, a 15-foot cone can just barely get all 4 of these at an angle. His breath weapon is fire damage as a gold-scaled dragonborn, and it requires a dexterity save, I believe. Yes, a dexterity saving throw from all 4 zombies of DC 8 plus Ravor's Constitution of 2, which is 10, plus his proficiency bonus, which is also 2. So this is a DC 12 dex save from 4 zombies. The zombies have a -2. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 2 of them have succeeded. 2 of them have failed. And on a D10 with 10, 2 of them take 10 points of fire damage, 2 of them take 5. And that is Ravor's turn. We come then to Alex, who has very little he can do attack-wise, aside from the trusty Firebolt. On a 16 to hit, Firebolt does 1d10 fire damage, this time for 2 on the front-running zombie. They are injured, but not terribly so. We come then to the group of zombies, and there will be 4 attacks here. 2 on Ravor, 2 on Wallace. Thankfully, none of them have advantage. For Ravor, we have to beat an armor class 10. And with a 16 and 11, Ravor will be hit twice. For Wallace, we have to beat an armor class 14. And on a 10 and a 15, he will only be hit once. Wallace takes 7 points of bludgeoning damage and is nearly knocked to the ground. One of his ribs cracks under the impact. Ravor takes 2d6 and is likewise nearly bloodied. With the zombie's turn completed, the priest steps forward and will use another divine aid for Abjure Undead. That is 4 wisdom saves, each -2, DC 15. 4, 12, 7, and 0. All 4 of the zombies are turned and begin fleeing. They are forced at full movement speed away from the priest, who can then step backwards and usher the party into the mausoleum, where they hunker down, find cover, and wait. As we come out of initiative order with these zombies fleeing from the graveyard, the priest ushering our party to safety, we will open up what happens next to the first Fractal poll. Thank you all for watching. I've been Moss. Hello. I'm Moss. You're either at the end of episode 1 or you're watching this standalone intro by itself to get an idea for what Fractal is all about, and you may be wondering what you've stumbled upon here. Like I said before, my name's Moss. I'm the narrator, the dungeon master, and basically the entire team running the show right now. This project is operating under the title Fractal, and at its core, it's trying to sit in the middle of 2 different formats. On one side, you have a radio drama that is scripted, planned, intentional storytelling, and on the other side, a D&D actual play. Dice rolls, player decisions, things going wrong in real time. And the goal is to land firmly in the middle. Parts of it are going to be written, parts of it are prepared, but when I sit down to record, it is live recorded and it's unedited. Everything you just heard, if you're at the end of episode 1, was fully live. There is no editing, all the sounds are cued manually. It is as close to sitting at a table with me as the dungeon master as I can get. This way, the characters can still fail, and once something happens, it is a part of the story forever. Which is kind of the point. It means that there's less room for cleanup, less room to fix mistakes, but it also means that what you're hearing is real. The tension is real, the consequences are real. And perhaps most importantly, you can be a part of it. At the end of every episode, there's going to be a poll, and that poll stays open for at least a week, or until I start working on the next episode. And through that, you get to influence what happens. Sometimes that's going to be big picture story direction. Sometimes it's going to be smaller things like character decisions, character priorities, maybe even how someone approaches a specific problem. But every episode is basically a fork in the road, and you get a say in which path we take. That means this isn't just a watch along. I want it to be as interactive as possible. And technically that process already started. Back when I was first putting this show together, I ran an early poll with my own personal TTRPG group. I knew I wanted a party of 3 split on 3 different archetypes, 3 different roles. The initial voters, they voted on classes and they voted on species, and that helped shape the foundation for the cast of our first arc. So even from the beginning, this has been a collaborative thing, and that's really what I want it to be going forward. A story that is planned and feels intentional, but open enough that it can be a surprise to all of us, including me. So that's the idea, and if that sounds like something you're into, stick around, because from here on out, every decision matters, and there's no going back. Thank you.